we wanted to do a little extra because we were talking. We're back. This is Steve Stevens, former Fresno Police Department officer and also a professor of criminology at Fresno State. We were talking about his finding out that he was adopted. You mentioned a name, Maury Wills, and you said, "Do you know who Maury Wills is?" I said, "Are you kidding me? I met him. I met him over a series of a whole week." He was a professional baseball player for the Dodgers. And we used to take, we had baseball, the San Diego School of Baseball that we used to go and spend like, it was like a baseball camp. Mm-hmm. And he was one of the guys who taught my group specifically. He was one of the head guys there that would come in as a guest. And he was one of the guys that was teaching us back in the day. And I remember he was a super nice guy, at least for us. But he was what to you?
My uncle.
He was your uncle.
My mother's brother. My natural mother's brother.
And we were talking about your natural mother when you finally met your real brother and sister, that they were bitter because your mother had given you guys all up for adoption.
Yes. And
tell me about it. Yeah.
It was, you have to remember, back in the late 50s, 60s, adoptions and what have you you can be adopted and sent all the way across the country.
Right. No records, no
family, no birth family, nothing.
Usually a contract with an attorney where an attorney was making some money by basically giving this baby away.
Yes. And
it was taboo too. People didn't talk about it.
People didn't talk about it. And it was because my mother's father, Uncle Maury's Uncle Maury's father and my mother's father, he was a big time Baptist minister in Washington, D.C. And I don't mind saying it, that my mother and father were not married.
And I know where this is going. And the Baptist minister couldn't have that public.
He could not have it public because he's on the pulpit on Sundays preaching, you don't do this, you don't have children out of wedlock and blah, blah, blah. And here my mother's getting pregnant and having us. And then, so it was one of those deals whereas she had to leave Washington, D.C. and she came to California and stayed with here's the funny part. She stayed with a lady who is Mrs. Stevens, my foster mother, who happens to be my birth father's aunt. Okay. So there's a potential then that your mother knew of this lady and the contract was set up or the agreement was set up between them maybe? Correct. There was an agreement for what I was told that you have the baby, Stevie, leave him here. You go home to your dad, work it out, get it, tell him about Stevie and then you can always come and get him when you want. But my mother never told my grandfather. Boy. And because she was scared. Oh, she never told him. Oh. So she probably never made an attempt to come out and see you or anything because she was scared that Grandpa would find out? Incorrect. She never, and only one or two members. Grandmother had 13 children. So my mother had 13 siblings and only one sibling, the oldest sister, knew about me. But do you have any connection with that family anymore these days? No. Most of my aunts and uncles have all passed on. I've only got to meet them once. I went back to meet them, and it's funny how I met them was Uncle Maury. Correction, I was here in Fresno doing something, and a gentleman told me, "You're a Wills." Excuse me, you're a Wills. Do you know who Uncle? Do you know who Maury Wills is? I said, "Oh yeah, he's a baseball player for the Dodgers. He's my hero." And blah blah blah. Me not knowing who he was, other than a baseball player. Man, I said, "No, son, you're kin to him." Wow. So I wrote Uncle Maury And I wrote Maury Wills to the Dodgers.
Yeah.
I wrote him and wrote him and wrote him. And all I was getting was all this fan mail stuff back.
Because
And
they thought you were
they thought I
writing
was just a
fan mail that they didn't read, right?
And so then it wasn't until I started saying things that caught Uncle Maury's attention. And then he called me.
Really?
He called me, and I was in the Army at the time in Kansas City. And he called me. And people say we sound just alike. They say we look alike.
Yeah.
And he said, how did you find out about all this? And I told him. He said, Stevie, he said, give me your phone number. I'll call you right back. So I gave him my number. The whole day went. I never heard from him. And I tried to call him back. No answer, nothing. I had given him my address, my phone number, and everything. About a week later, I started getting all these letters from Washington, D.C. And these were my cousins, my aunts, my uncles. Oh. And they were inviting me to come back to visit. And my grandfather had passed away already.
Right.
My grandmother was still alive. And I got to meet her.
So he may not have. Did he ever call you back? Did he ever talk to you?
He called me back, but what he did was he
told everybody, hey, we have this.
He said, yes. He said, Pat had a baby boy. And he has said some things that you only would know if you were
Wills.
And so he and I became the best of friends.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And I like to camp a lot, and we were camping over one time over at the Grand Canyon. Yeah. And he lives over in Sedona, Arizona. So my wife and one of our daughters, we went over to visit with him and spent the weekend with him, and 2 years later he passed away.
I remember him from the baseball camp. He was a very sweet guy, smile on his face, just super nice guy. Yeah. Oh boy. So you're lucky. Good for you.
So it's
yeah, you had a full life. You have a very full life. Lots of family. God, you have a ton of family.
Yeah, we did. I did.
Well, hey, thanks for telling the story. I think that's just awesome, just great. Out of all the tough times and stuff like that, there sure was a huge payoff with a lot of family and a lot of good times, huh?
So, yes, and I'd like to feel that. What's that old saying? When life gives you lemons,
you make lemonades.
So I made lemonade.
Or coming from Washington, D.C., it may have been sweet tea or something like that. So
yes,
right?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I was born right outside of Washington, D.C. myself, Bethesda, Maryland. So I'm a D.C. guy too, as far as that's concerned. Yeah,
I was born at the old University Medical Center.
Yeah,
back then it was called Fresno General Hospital.
Oh, good. Oh, right, Bethesda there. Naval Hospital for me. But anyway, all right. Hey, thanks for that extra. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.